Hi there, I'm Jen, this is Remembered Reads, and this is going to be the Top 10 Nonfiction Books Tag. This tag was created and I was tagged by Lukash from Totally Pretentious, who has the best booktube channel name. And this is a tag that is supposed to be you naming your 10 favorite nonfiction titles, and the only rules are that it can't be a religious text and it can't be poetry, which is a shame because I think some of my favorite nonfiction is actually poetry. So, appalling. And I love reading about Hadith science. So, you can't, that's religious. Although I've seen a lot of people talk about books that actually are religious adjacent, and I think maybe they were interpreting it as you just can't pick the Quran or the Bible. But I feel like if I did a whole video talking about Hadith science, nobody would want to watch that. I was tagged quite a while ago, and I've been putting off doing that because I think a lot of my nonfiction reading is driven by a desire to get information, and you can't get all the information from any one place. So if I'm interested in something, I'm interested in reading 20 books on the subject, and each one has different values. So am I looking at it from a perspective of simply the quality of the writing? Because sometimes I've read a very good book. Like I recently read Lee Marichel's Talking to Canadians, which is a series of essays about political and social situations in Canada. However, there are errors in some of the background information that she gives. There's some stuff about language and a bit about trigonometry, and it's not true. Now, that's not core to what she's discussing, but I can't say something like that is a favorite when there are clear mistakes in it. So that's a dilemma. When I did the BookTube Top 10s tag, I did name a few favorites that I think I enjoy from a perspective of writing, because I think that tag was specifically looking at writing, and I didn't choose nonfiction for that just because I thought that made it too complicated. But I did include a few titles, so maybe I'll include a clip of that video. I'm going to spend forever even just dividing up, for example, what is my favorite First World War memoir? Would I pick Goodbye to All That, which I think is hilarious? Would I pick Seven Pillars of Wisdom, which I think is probably in large part, or at least in some part, made up, but is really beautiful? Would I pick Testament of Youth, which I think is really meaningful? So I wanted to not have that worry. Unfortunately, that means I also can't include a book that had a huge impact on my life in a practical way, which is Gerard Diamond's The Third Chimpanzee, which I read when I was in my last year of high school, and it determined a lot of the educational choices that I made in post-secondary. It also means I can't pick The Adventures of Hergé, which is a really brilliant biography of Tintin writer Hergé in the style of Tintin. And it's just a brilliant, both a great biography of his life, but also such a brilliant reflection on the impact that he had on specifically Franco-Belgian comics, but also just comics in general. So I can't pick those, but those 5 are favorites of mine. So those books are obviously a potential 5 out of my top 10, but I realized as I was planning this that the nonfiction that I go back to the most often is actually very practical. It's things like cookbooks and the guidebook for my car. And I don't particularly think that the user's manual for my car should be my favorite book, but my car is currently my car is almost 14 years old, and my goal is to get at least 300,000 kilometers on it. I'm at 281 and change right now. It was especially entertaining. I took that car with me when I lived the 5 years in the US, and I would, take it for an oil change, and people were like, wow, you have a lot of miles. I'm like, no, it's kilometers. It's still a lot of miles, but it's not as many as they think when it's almost, because almost 300,000 kilometers is not quite the same as almost 300,000 miles. In any case, I don't really think that's my favorite book, but I have consulted it a lot. So is that not the point of nonfiction? That and the cookbook. So anyway, I'm going to insert maybe the video from the nonfiction on BookTube tag that I did, because I think that might feed into some of these answers as well. Question number 4 is, do you have a favorite nonfiction book? I feel like that's a weird question because I have a really old copy of the Fanny Farmer cookbook, which is just a big, thick cookbook, and that is super useful. I've been using that regularly for 15 years. Like, I have a secondhand copy that I got somewhere, and it's great. I don't know that I would call it my favorite to read, but it is functionally. Hey, this is editing me, and I realized as I was watching that clip where I'm talking about the cookbook that just over this weekend, I have one, used that cookbook for a recipe, and two, had my sister text me to send her a picture of the page so that she could make something from that. So that book definitely gets extra points because I do genuinely use that all the time. I also have a huge encyclopedia of the dog, but that again was something I got at a garage sale that was about 25 cents, and it's a book from the 60s, I think. And it's a book of dog breeds and dog training methods, and it's incredibly in-depth. It's a big, thick book, and that's been incredibly useful just socially because I spend so much time at dog parks. So anytime you see a new dog, you can look up the breed and find out all kinds of information about what they were like before kind of current pet trends, when everybody crossed everything with a poodle. Okay, so those were some additional answers, but I think something else I maybe should be considering is books that I've missed because they're in storage. I have put books into storage twice, once when my ex-husband and I first moved to the US, and then again in a different storage location when I moved back to Canada, and I was originally moving out west, but I've decided instead I'm helping my mother clear out her house. So the vast majority of my books are not with me, and some of them have not been with me for a long time now. So do I miss any of those? And I think the answer is yes, or a qualified yes. I have definitely missed my collected letters of Edith Sitwell because, as I said in the clip that I inserted earlier, I'm a huge First World War buff, and when I read new biographies of characters of some of those writers, I really enjoy going back to her letters because she had correspondence with all of them, and it's a lot of fun to see what she was writing to them and what they were writing to her, how they were talking about each other. So I have definitely missed that book and wished that I had access to it still, so I think I have to mention that. And I have a couple of times wished I had a textbook from this third year human population biology class that I took at university, because for a surprising number of reasons, and I kept the textbook because I thought it was really interesting just outside of anything else. I don't know if that's weird to have not sold that back, but it is a book where I have read news articles reporting on a lot of kind of pop health information, and I've thought there are things in that book that would tie into the right way to interpret information that's being filtered through kind of popular lens, or if you do go back to the articles that the popular articles are talking about. So I have wished that I had that. I don't even remember the name of the book now, which makes it difficult to say, this must be my favorite, and I don't remember the name of it. It might have just been human population biology, to be honest. Anyway, this was my kind of sad attempt at doing this tag. I would love to know if this kind of tag is as difficult for you as it was for me, because, yeah, most of my reading is nonfiction, so you would think that this would be a lot easier than it is, but it was quite challenging. Yeah, and I haven't even talked about humor writing, and I love some good humor writing, so. Anyway, I should be tagging people, but this tag is now of the vintage where it's not old enough that I feel like I can tag new people and it'll go around again, but it's not new enough that I can genuinely remember who's been tagged already. But if you are watching this, please consider yourself tagged. And thank you to Lukash for creating the tag and for tagging me and causing me all of this stress as I tried to figure out what I was going to say for it. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.